All right, people, Deadhouse Gates is today's review, and I want to start off by giving you a TLDR review in under 1 minute, and then you can decide if you want to listen to the rest of the video. So I love this book. My final rating for this book will be 9.3 out of 10. However, I did not really enjoy it that much in the beginning, and I'd say for the first half of the book, I was in doubt. I was kind of moving along with it and digging it, but at the same time I considered quitting the entire series a couple of times because I felt like this is too slow, this is not going anywhere, and this is not worth it. However, that changed since I kept reading on the book and everything made sense and everything was worth it having read the entire book, because it just turns into something beautiful and amazing in the second half of the book. So a lot of mixed feelings, very complicated for me to read, but at the end of the day, loving this book, 9.3 out of 10, and that's the 1 minute mark. And if you want to stay for longer than that, please stay and I will explain. So that was my intro. So first of all, I want to say if you want to support this kind of content, please subscribe, like, comment at the end of the video, but I'll get going. So I'll start with the negatives actually, since I gave a very positive TLDR review there. It is a 9.3, mind you. That's a really high score. This might be the second or third best book that I've read in my life. But the first half of it felt kind of meh, to be honest. And there are many reasons for that compared to Gardens of the Moon, because most people that read this book, you've already read Gardens of the Moon, so it's not really relevant for you to not think about that in context. But compared to Gardens of the Moon, this is a much more dark, tragic, and sad book. There's a theme of, for me, there's a theme of inevitability, sacrifice, loss, and tragedy in this book that it's not really there in Gardens of the Moon in the same way. There is war stuff and tragedy in Gardens of the Moon as well, but Gardens of the Moon on a whole for me felt very exciting fantasy, happy-go-lucky, interesting magic, cool-ass shit. And this one has stuff like that too, but it is a more of a feel of true tragedy and heavy events, and the scope is much larger in this book as well. It is a huge scope compared to Gardens of the Moon that focuses more or less on one city. So the stories are also much more different and varied than in Gardens of the Moon from my perspective, so it was much harder to make transitions between the POVs in this book as well. And some of the POVs in themselves are very slow, and it's just so much sadness and misery heaped onto each other that you're like, what the fuck am I even reading at some point? You know, where's this gonna lead? But it is worth it. That's where it started to shine for me, and the whole thing started to morph and change in a beautiful way. But that was an issue. It's not as accessible as Gardens of the Moon for me. And it's also, there's also one more minus for me, a huge minus, which is, okay, Steven Erikson is, apparently he's written the best book I've read in my life, which was Gardens of the Moon. So that's a caveat. I'm giving this book a 9.3, remember that. But he has a very poetic language sometimes that is not super direct. That language is beautiful and magnificent when it comes to smaller scale events, characters, conversations, thoughts. It's just so beautiful and witty. But when it comes to some larger battle scenes, and you want to read, you want to know exactly what is happening, and there's something concrete that is happening. Everyone's seeing it, but you get like a poetic, indirect explanation of what is happening, and you just sit there like, what the fuck? What just happened? You reread it in the book, you listen to it in the audiobook, because these books I have to listen to the audiobook after each chapter, because otherwise it's undigestible. I re-listen to the audiobook, I check the notes, there's like a note PowerPoint someone made on the internet. I check these multiple times. I still do not comprehend what just happened in this battle scene. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. So if I'm going to critique this book fairly, I'm definitely going to say that, you know, the start was very slow, way too slow, especially one of the sub-stories. the most tragic one, I would say. I can say it's in the mines, to not spoil too much. That one moved way too slow, but it actually turned into a fantastic one. But it moved way too slow. There was a lot of tragedy. That's not a minus in and of itself, but using that poetic language for things that should be so obvious. It's one thing not holding your hand and not lore dumping on you, which he doesn't do, which I love. But when you have something explicitly happening and everyone sees it, you want to know what it is. And when it's written, I have one specific scene in mind where I'm still like, okay, I'm just going to assume that's what happened. And it's like the most important thing that happens during the first battle that is actually like fully described. So I'm not going to spoil it, but that's like, I still don't comprehend how should I have understood what happened in that scene. But yeah, I kind of put things together afterwards. I saw a summary on YouTube. I reread it and I was like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. That is a huge problem. I have to be honest. I still love this book. I fucking love this book. So those were the negatives out of the way. So you got in the summary review, you got in the negatives. Let's get to the positives because we're waiting for that, right? So what are the positives of the book? I love this book. Just the fact that I disliked it in the beginning and it flipped itself and turned around for me is a plus in itself because I was not expecting that. I got over the hurdle and all of the things that were like, what are these? They started making sense to me in a way, and the stories came together in a magical way. Not all of the stories are like super connected, but they still came together in such an amazing way. Erikson always surprises me. And I'm a guy who's been exposed to a lot of fantasy in books, video games, movies. This surprises me like nothing else. I'm like, how is he going to solve this? And I have like 5 theories on how he's going to solve it, and none of them are correct. So it kind of makes you feel very intelligent and very stupid at the same time, which I like because it's just very stimulating and fun. Another thing I love about this book, which is a series thing, is that for me, it's interactive because I check the glossaries, I check the character indexes, I check off things that I've seen and been exposed to. I love that. I just love that. I just turn it into a thing, like a game book almost. I adore these books. Another plus is there are some scenes, especially in the final third of this book, there are some scenes that I will probably never forget in my entire life. And it is almost such a strong experience to read them that it feels like I have been there physically. And I'm usually not like that. I usually don't give a fuck when I read a book or see a movie. But there's something about these books that really, it just, the immersion, the level of immersion and the themes. And even if this was super tragic in many ways, there was some comic relief, but the focus on this book it's pretty heavy. So I would say compared to Gardens of the Moon, this is heavy. This is not as fun of a read. It's not like Gardens of the Moon had a lot more moments when I was just laughing out loud, or I was just happy, excited in a cool way. Like, this is so cool. This is so freaking awesome. This book had cool moments, of course, and big moments, but the framework of this book is still within a framework of immense sadness and despair and the worst experiences that humans can go through. So this was real heavy, but I love it for what it is. So that was basically it. This and Gardens of the Moon actually feel like the first entry in the series. Because after Gardens of the Moon, I was really curious and motivated and happy to go on this journey. But after this one, I feel like I'm all in now, and in a heavy way. And I like that we have these two stories where I would say Gardens of the Moon is a more traditional fantasy story from my perspective, and this is more of a very different one. It's a desert setting. It has a lot of weird stuff going on. And I like that we're having these parallel stories because I've heard that, Memories of Ice continues the first book and the fourth book continues this book. So I just love the entire thing. I'm looking forward to it even more. And I'm still processing the ending of this. I'm still processing some parts of this that were so profound and so beautiful. And I stand by everything I've said earlier about Malazan. It is not too complicated. It is not super hard to get into. It's just, you just have to keep reading sometimes because you can't control what you don't already know. And some things you're never going to find out about, but just keep reading, because you will be rewarded enough when you keep reading and when you complete a book. And it's also unexpected which threads he picks up during a book, and things just show up out of nowhere and surprise you, and it's just so delightful. So yeah, I don't even know what to say. This far, this series has blown my mind. It's probably the reason why I made this YouTube channel, and I can't wait to read more. I'm already down to reread this later on. But yeah, this is a 9.3 out of 10, and might be one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. I highly recommend it, but you do want to read Gardens of the Moon first. That's a no-brainer for me. You definitely want to read it first. There are a lot of characters here that are from the first book, so it is a sequel. Don't let anyone say anything else. And having completed this, I was just so hungry for more Malazan. I'm already like 200 pages into Memories of Ice, which is a great review, and my mind is already blown by that book. So this is just getting better and better all the time. Can't wait to read more. Can't wait to give you more reviews, and I'm also down to give you more spoiler videos. Like maybe I'll do some character tier videos. Maybe I'll do some thoughts on specific topics. But yeah, that's basically it. Not gonna rant for too long. We're right under 12 minutes, and I'm just gonna say this was an unexpected journey. I went from thinking it's okay to this is so incredible. There are scenes in this that I will never forget for the rest of my life, and I'm so grateful for this series existing. Yeah, I am not grateful for the covers. The covers are atrocious. But how the fuck can the covers for these books be so terrible? Like, we need a revamp for that. We need some good artists to come in and make exceptional, epic fantasy covers for Malazan. That's another video. But guys, thank you for listening. I appreciate you listening to this review. Let me know what you think about Deadhouse Gates. Was your experience similar to me? Your negative and positive feedbacks? And yeah, stay tuned for the next video.